Step One Academy. I'm Dr. C. Please join me in this musical journey. Let's go! Hello, everybody. Today we're here with Gina Melilli. She's a great friend of mine, and she's a principal flute of Savannah Philharmonic.
So yeah, I'm a flute player. I've been playing with the Savannah Philharmonic for since the beginning, since the very first concert. And I've been a what you call a freelance orchestral musician my entire career since about 2003. I'm generally a piccolo player. I play in the Greenville Symphony and the South Carolina Phil and the Columbus Symphony on the little piccolo.
Okay.
But I was lucky enough to get principal here in Savannah, and it's been great to rotate and play different parts on the same piece.
You're actually doing your DMA currently. You're at
PhD, actually.
PhD. Okay.
I figured I had enough performance degrees. I did do my bachelor's and my master's I went to Northwestern for my master's in performance about 17 years ago or 18 years ago. Ooh. I'd always been interested in musicology, which is the study of music history and analysis and that kind of thing. I just finished my first year in the PhD program at the University of Florida.
Flute is one of the biggest mysteries actually for me. Can you tell me, like, is it physically demanding to exert that much energy and air?
I have to say, I am 5 feet tall. And the flute is very challenging because we blow across to make our sound, not all of our air goes into the instrument. So that means it takes more air to play the flute than any other instrument except maybe the tuba.
Okay.
So it made a runner out of me. I've been a runner since graduate school, since my master's degree, just to keep up with the people whose lungs are longer than I am tall. First thing to know is that 80% of the sound comes from this little part, which is the head joint. And this is called a lip plate, and because we put it on our lip. And this kind of playing, so blowing across something to make a sound, is I would say the third oldest instrument of all time. Obviously, the human voice would be the oldest instrument, and then probably percussion, but the flute comes next. And so just blowing across to make a sound. So this is what we would have beginners do, so they don't have to worry about fingering or anything else on the flute, is just to try to master blowing across.
Mm-hmm.
And this can be all kinds of different shapes. There's people who specialize in just making head joints, and then there's people who make the whole thing. This is a professional flute. It is made out of silver. That's the difference. I'm going to lean back so you can see all of it.
Mm-hmm.
Between a beginner flute and a professional flute is mainly the metal. The beginner flutes are made of nickel, which is a nice soft metal so that you're not having to force air. The harder the metal, the more air it's going to take to play. I have a little bit of gold in the lip plate because the harder the metal, the more projection you get. So we also have a key system. So I've got a lot of keys here. They're open hole, and then it has a little extra key on the bottom, a B foot, that helps with the length of the tube. So like the string, we have to adjust the length of the tube to get the right notes out. So if I close all of the holes, I get my lowest note. And that way the air goes down the whole tube.
Okay.
So it's the length of the tube. If it's a higher note, like I won't do too high, but like high G, my thumb is off, so air is coming out right here. So that's a really short tube.
Is that the same as like you're blowing in a bottle?
It's totally the same. It's totally the same. And actually, there's this great concerto for garbage percussion by a Canadian composer whose name escapes me, but they have a whole movement where they have to blow into different bottles.
Tell us, since flute is belonging into woodwind family of instruments, and you just showed us that flute, and you said there's nothing wood, about it. So how did we still consider you guys not brass?
So I have a convenient way to show you this.
Okay.
I have a Baroque flute. I do play Baroque flute. Many flute players do not. This is the kind of flute that Bach would have had from his day. And it's 6 holes and this one key. So, but you'll notice that the head joint is the same. It is made out of wood. So the point of this flute was to play in smaller spaces with quieter instruments. So as technology advanced and any instrument, especially strings, and singers could play any note and in any key, like chromatically, the wooden flute without keys couldn't keep up. So I'll play a little bit of a chromatic scale for you. So I got the half steps in there, but I had to do.
You're cheating a little bit.
Yeah, I'm cheating a lot. And so there's certain things like F sharp. If I don't do anything to the F, it's just a flatter F sharp. So that they started adding keys to the flute, and around Mozart's time, he had about 5 keys, and the flute sounded terrible, which is why he wrote 3 really bad concertos for us. They started in the mid-19th century. A Dutch metallurgist invented the flute that we have now, basically, and it was perfected in Paris. Louis Lot was the famous flute maker of the late 19th, early 20th century, and his flutes actually still exist. And they thought about trying to copy them about 100 years later. Altus, which is one of the flute makers, tried to do it, and then they analyzed the metal and realized the lead content was too high. It could
feel it dangerous to play.
Yeah, exactly. But there's not been much change to this instrument since then. So this instrument's about almost 200 years old. So this instrument allows us to play chromatically and homogeneously, and then in any octave. Equally, and then we can color that dynamic. So this is the best instrument in the world because it screams above the orchestra. It's still made of wood. I think for the color and for the head joint itself, it's made differently from a flute. Mine has hips, so it kind of comes out right here before, and that helps with the sound. It does have a silver key mechanism. They make silver piccolos that are cylindrical, basically, and they're good for playing outdoors, playing in band. Obviously, it's smaller than the flute, but it has the same fingering mechanism, but it just plays an octave higher.
you to the flute?
Well, it's a funny story. So I started piano when I was 5. My mom was a clarinetist in school and pretty good. She almost went to college on the clarinet. She was like, "Why don't you try piano and see if you like it?" And I did. And so by the time I was getting bored with the piano, it was about time to start band. And so I was like, "I want to play the French horn because I'm left-handed."
Okay.
And I was, determined to do it. Mom got me a trumpet because you had to start on trumpet and then you switch. And then I never got to start on trumpet because my orthodontist stepped in and was like, "No, you can't play the French horn." So I was like, "I can't play the French horn." And Mom was like, "You're kind of small. Like you're gonna have to carry this big case around. Like, why don't you try?" I played clarinet. Why don't you try the flute? Because I started on the flute and I can play the flute, and then I switched to clarinet, and then I thought about switching back, and my parents wouldn't let me. So I was like, "Okay, fine, I'll try the flute." And then I started playing it. Once you get a sound out, like that's the hardest part. So I started playing the flute, and I was like, "Man, this is so much easier. You only read one line of music. You've always got the melody. Like there is nothing wrong with playing the flute." So that's how I went. And I was lucky enough. So I studied with the piccolo player of the Atlanta Symphony, Carl Hall, and I was in the Atlanta Symphony Youth Orchestra for 4 years, which studies with the Atlanta Symphony while I was in high school. And I feel like that was my high school. And but the payoff for that was we got to do the closing ceremonies of the Olympic Games.
So I know that you're a video game enthusiast,
Well, I
but not
was.
anymore.
So I have to be careful. I one of the recordings I've made is the Super Mario Brothers theme. So the NES, the original NES came out when I was probably 5 or so, and I played that thing all through high school. I got a Sega Genesis eventually, but like constantly. And so it was either practice, do your homework, or play video games, and it was just this balance. I swear that playing video games helped with hand-eye coordination, which is exactly what we're doing when we're reading music. We're getting information, making our fingers
We'll
respond.
be careful to encourage.
Exactly. So like I tell my students moderate video game playing, but I quit video games cold turkey, I think, after the PlayStation, the original PlayStation, because I was like, I am never going to practice as an adult. I know myself.
So thank you so much for chatting with me about flute,
Sure.
and to introducing this instrument to a wider audience.